Right. Welcome, everybody, to the tavern. Tonight's episode was sponsored by Mad World. Check them out at www.itsworldmadness.com. Also, check out our Tavern X Mad World hoodie on sale now. If you want to grab it, go ahead and check it out. Join our tavern family. We would appreciate it. Tonight, our special guest, Jeffery Davis. He is a life coach who helps entrepreneurs and professionals achieve high performance without sacrificing their health, relationships, or fulfillment. He advocates for moving away from hustle culture and towards sustainable practices that support long term success. Mr. Davis, how are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you guys tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing real good.
Nice.
So let me hit you with that first question right off the rip. Uh, what is presence and why is it important for leading a fulfilling life?
Well, presence involves a couple things. Number one is it involves being in the moment with yourself and the moment. So, and when you're doing that, that brings you to a place of clarity, brings you to a place of connection, brings you to a place of your own personal truth. It brings you to a place where you can connect with somebody in response to what's happening in the moment, as opposed to bringing in things that are unhealed or things that you're resenting from the past or projections from the future. So it's really the moment of opportunity for everyone by being present.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you had to, how do I explain this? So if you had someone who had trouble bringing themselves into the moment and really, let's say for me, for example, I have a problem with my anxiety. So I could stream from 1 second to 72 years into the future is what I'm worried about because of butterfly effects. How would you recommend someone like me bring myself into the present and focus on being present?
Got it. Well, you just explained how you're not present, which is you're in your head and you're thinking into the future.
True.
So when you're thinking into the future, your anxiety is a result of you forecasting things breaking down, problems happening, and issues that are unforeseeable and probably will never happen. So you're negative casting is what I call it instead of
Yes.
forecasting, right?
Okay.
So
Negative casting. I like that.
right. So the opposite of that is what's happening right now. So the easiest way to do that is to tune into your body, which exists in this right now.
Okay.
So the way you can do that is either come back to your breath, just taking a moment and just breathing into your body, or you have five senses, tuning
Okay.
into any of the senses that are happening at this moment. So, what are you feeling? What do your shoes feel like? How's your shirt feel? How's the weather feel? What are
Oh,
you looking at in front of you? What do you hear? What are you tasting in your mouth? Like, if you just go through any of those five senses, you will come to the present.
okay. That's a really good tip. I like that one. I like that
Yeah.
one a lot.
So for you right now, I mean, you could just say, "Well, what does my beard feel like?"
Yeah, you see, I do that, right? When I when
Yeah.
I'm somewhere, I'm like, that's my thing. I gotta stroke the
Right.
beard,
Yeah.
right?
So you may actually, what's interesting is, I'm guessing, but you may do that when you're in a pensive moment
Uh-huh.
thinking into the future, but you can anchor that beard into being in the present and not
True.
jumping into the future.
I like that. I love that you're able to on the fly, like right now, in the moment, in the moment, in the present,
Right.
be able to help with that. Yeah, that shows the amount of knowledge that you have that you're bringing to the table. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the
Well,
second question here.
part of
Okay,
being present and in the moment is noticing what's happening, right?
true, very true.
And not being in, when I'm in the future, in the past, or I have expectations or whatever, I can't really feel you, I can't really see you, I can't interpret where you are and where I'm at, what's happening right now. So when I'm present and I'm not carrying anything into this, I can notice, oh well, he's doing this,
Yeah,
so why would he do what's a typical person doing that? They're like thinking, right?
yeah.
So
Let me see here. So What are some of the biggest obstacles that people face when trying to cultivate presence in their lives, and how can they overcome this? So it's kind of the same question that I asked, but like, what are some things that you notice that cause people to have that issue?
Well, there's a lot going on in the world. And so, one of the ways that people are not being present and that is in the way of them being present is getting caught up in things that you can't impact. Right. And so, one of the first things that I would recommend to somebody to do to start to stabilize, because not being present is an unstable place to be, right? You're
Yeah,
not standing on the present ground. You're off in the future that will never happen the way you're forecasting it or negative casting it. Never happen that way, right? Exactly.
yeah.
So the first thing I would tell people to come to the present moment is to turn off the news,
Ooh, see, I haven't watched the news in so long. If I want to find out what's going on in the world, I will directly dig for it. But to sit around and just watch the news all the time,
right?
it's nothing but negativity, man.
Yeah. So there's an acronym for the news that the news doesn't necessarily tell you, but I'll tell you. So the news, not even worth seeing.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Right. So start to really, what's in what's in the way of being present for somebody that's out there. Again, is you're in the future, you're in the past, you're not in the present moment, you're not in your body, and you've got emotions that you're carrying through that you may be blocking that are when you're not expressing them, the emotions they build up and they come out. Emotions are energy, and they pass through or they build up and then they come out in other ways. It's like, okay, so you left the shirt on the chair, and your wife is upset about it, and then during that evening you're like, hey honey, can you pass the salt? Oh yeah, here's the salt.
Ooh,
Right. So it's
ooh,
like, that's just a rough example. It could be anything, anybody, but when you're present, you've let go of things. You're not holding on to resentments. You're clean, and you're fully experiencing all of the possibility in the current moment. And the current moment is where everything is possible,
very true. Very true. Love that. Let me
right?
see here.
So,
So, how does cultivating presence impact other areas of our lives, such as our work, relationships, and overall sense of purpose?
well, when you have a sense of presence, then of course your relationships are going to be much more connected and engaged, and people are going to feel you. People, whether they consciously or subconsciously acknowledge or express or feel it, they always feel if you're thinking of a response while they're talking,
Ooh,
right? People feel you being present with them and listening to them as the conversation organically goes, and you're in a place when you're connecting with somebody really deeply. The two tools to do that beyond presence is curiosity and compassion. And if you use those two things, you can connect with anybody anytime.
I like that you use the word curiosity
uh
because to be curious about someone else in the moment shows that you care about what things mean to them. So I love that use of that word. That I stumbled me up a little bit because that's a powerful way to say that. I like that word.
yeah, and when you're curious, you're actually listening.
Let me see. The people in the chat say, "I just agree with this man. That is all." Yes, love you guys. So, can you share some tips or exercises that people can use to cultivate presence on a daily basis?
Sure. So, one of the things that you can do is to start being present with yourself. So, some people have uh, a voice in their head that is constantly narrating things or
Oh,
negative casting things.
yes.
Um, right. And so, if that happens and you're listening to it, you're actually not being kind to yourself, because the voice is never really very
Never
kind.
kind.
and you're not being present because you're off somewhere having a dialogue or listening to the dialogue or narrating it instead of actually being present.
Oh yeah.
So the first thing that I would do is if that is the case, and it's the case for many people, is that I would acknowledge that and be okay with that, and you don't need to engage or listen to that voice, and just acknowledge that that voice, on some level, is trying to protect you.
True. True.
It
That
may
is
not be,
a
it
good
may
point.
actually not protect you, and may not be there for your growth, but that's the intention of the voice.
Yeah.
Right, so you can simply just be, you don't have to engage with it. It's like if you don't have to engage with everybody that has a different opinion than you, or even an opinion that
I
you don't
wish
like.
people knew that. I wish more people understood that. You don't have
Right,
to engage with them.
right. That stems from this insecurity and this desire and need to be right.
Yes.
And one of the most powerful things you can do in a relationship with yourself or others, especially others, is you make a choice. I'm going to be right, or I'm going to be in the relationship.
Mm. Mm.
Right,
That's
so
that's big.
yeah, it's huge because it's not a zero sum game of I have to be right. That will wear somebody down, because
Yes.
number one, you're never always right. Number two, there is no such thing as right. Somebody has a different experience than you, and your experience is not more right than their experience.
Exactly.
And if you're doing that, if you're fighting about who's right, you're missing what it's all about, which is what is the connection, what is the bridge, and what's the curiosity, and what's the compassion, right? So
Yes.
uh, you both have, let's just say, one person wants to stay inside because they think it's cold, and the other person wants to prepare the outside, or I don't know. I mean, just so the bottom line is not the actions that you're doing, it's the motivation can be the same,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of there's been a lot over the last couple of years of disagreement and conversations about the vaccine, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And two approaches, right? Take it, don't take it.
Yeah.
So, and they're both based on how can I be healthy?
That's a very good point because it's a differing opinion on, but you both are seeking the same concept. You want to be healthy, but you view it in two different ways.
Right. So there's the opportunity to connect, and there's where you can be present and be curious and listen with compassion for somebody, because they're speaking from a place of fear sometimes,
Yeah.
and when they're in a place of fear, they're more reactive. When you're in a place of fear, you are also losing about 30% of your IQ when you're in that active state. So
I
research
did not
shows
know
that.
that.
Right. So one of the places, so that's the advantage. Also, when you're present, is you have more clarity for decision making, whether it's business, whether whatever it happens to be. So the importance of doing this is enormous for your relationships, for your future, for your experience of life. And so it's super important to do that. And how you do that is to check into your body, because your body has all the answers. And if you're in the present moment with your body, and you have a relationship with yourself and with your body, then you'll know when you're present, or when your body is in a reactive state, or when you're, when you're checking out. So again, even with your body and your experience, if you're curious about it, you can always come back to being present,
Yes.
right? It's like, oh, okay, I feel tension here, and what is that doing in my body? Oh, that's fear. Oh, got it. So I can let that go with a breath. But if you're not paying attention to what's happening in your body, and sensations, and our feelings and
Yeah.
emotions in your body, that we assign, oh, that feeling is anger, that feeling is, happiness or sadness or something like that. And so, and your body actually has different reactions, right? So they've tested in different tiers, tears of happiness, tears of sadness, tears of disappointment. They all actually have different chemical makeups.
What?
Yeah.
I did not know. That's cool as all get out. I didn't know that.
right. And staying with sensations and how your body communicates. Um, I had an interesting experience. I was in the Apple store for close to 4 hours, so you can imagine how much fun that was.
Apple Store, I believe that.
Right. And so somehow some information got lost in their working on my computer. And
Uh-huh.
so I was there with a book, and I don't know why, but I wasn't expecting to be there that long, but I was there, and I was just breathing and just talking to the person. And I was like, wow, I'm really hot. I'm like, can you feel me? And he's like, oh yeah. And at that moment, I realized that I was having the sensation that would be anger, but I
Oh.
wasn't projecting it or anything else. And it all made sense to me because when people are angry, they're called hotheads,
Uh-huh.
right? And I literally was
So,
experiencing the heat. And there's
yes.
a big difference in the terminology, right? If I am angry, it's hard to separate from the sensations and have an experience of what anger feels like in my body.
Yeah.
So then I don't have a center. I am angry, but instead I have a grounded center where I'm just having an experience.
Okay.
Right?
So,
So you want to get to a place so that you really understand your body and your emotions, and keep coming back to center, and attune to what being centered feels like. So whether that's grounding with your senses, with your breath, or having a meditative practice that you do on a regular basis where you keep your when you meditate, you're literally entraining your brain to understand how to come back to clarity. And when you come back to clarity, you can come back to a centered place, which is being present.
so I think when you say finding that center, for me at least, the times where I notice that I am most centered, as
Uh-huh.
weird as this is going to sound, is so if I'm, let's say I'm having a conversation with someone who is expressing to me their feelings in that moment.
Right.
I'm very good about centering myself then and separating my emotions from what they are feeling, because their feelings are valid, and regardless if those feelings hurt me, they're still valid. They're allowed to have that feeling because something caused them to feel that way.
Right.
And I have noticed that I guess most people aren't like that, because typically I get the response of, "You're not upset with me for feeling that way?" No, because you feel that way. Why would I be upset? So clearly, this is something we need to figure out. And I get that response from people that are just shocked that I'm not angry or sad, or I'm just not showing this vast emotion when they say something that typically I guess other people would react greatly to. And I don't know why, but that is the one moment where I truly feel centered, is when I'm trying to understand someone else's emotion or point of view, if that makes sense.
Well, totally. When I'm trying, you said these words, when I'm trying to understand somebody else's emotional point of view, meaning when I'm curious about somebody else's experience.
Yes,
Right, which is
absolutely.
what I said before, which is what brings you back to being present when you're curious about somebody else, not in your head, not in your, projections or thinking about the answer, but you're in the moment and curious.
Absolutely. Because and that's the biggest thing is, and I tell people that is, and I like to, again, I go back to that. I love that word that you use, curiosity. It's just that I appreciate the honesty of the emotion.
Right,
I genuinely want to understand your point of view of why you feel hurt, why you feel angry, why you feel upset, whatever it is that you're feeling towards me in that moment. I want to understand why, so that I can genuinely get to the root of it and fix it. Because me being upset that you're upset doesn't fix anything.
no,
And I think people forget that. If you care about the person enough, you need to realize that they're hurting. At the core of their problem, they're hurting. And shouldn't you want to fix that if you care about them? Shouldn't
right,
your
right,
pride be on the back burner?
yeah. Well, I mean, you said some really profound things. So what's interesting is that, and I used to do this when I was much younger, is you want to fix it, but the masculine mindset, and certainly mine much younger, was the fix is, well, like you try to figure out who's right, or oh, that doesn't make sense, or you're overreacting, or da da da. But that's not the fix. Actually, the fix is the listening.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
it. People want to be seen, people want to be heard, and that's where humanity exists.
Yes.
That's where you connect intimately with somebody. And that's what this ride on this planet is all about. It's not about, spreadsheets and being in a room by yourself. It's about connection, right? Life purpose is about connection. Nobody ever said my life purpose is to sit on an island, never talk to anybody. It's to build something that will impact somebody or interact with people in a way that changes the world or changes my life or changes this one person's experience, or I evolve, right? It involves something else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me see here what my next question that we had for you was. Ooh, okay. How can people use their strengths to achieve success and fulfillment rather than focusing on their weaknesses?
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I don't really know why you would focus on your weaknesses to have fulfillment. Um, one of the reasons why you have strengths, or why you've developed those strengths even further than your innate talent with them, is because they generate a certain level of satisfaction and fulfillment by doing them, right? So inherently, there is some level of fulfillment in what your strengths are, and the things that you've avoided are things that you don't really enjoy slash have fulfillment from. So you can certainly, by shifting your perspective or reframing your view of something that you might not enjoy, you can find enjoyment in it, and it could change and be a wonderful experience for you. But typically, the things that we have strengths in are things that we really get some fulfillment out of and some enjoyment out of. So I would
Absolutely.
say definitely lean into those things because they light you up, and find where your learning, your contribution, and your enjoyment meet. And if that's a place that contributes to your experience in the world, other people's experience, or your bank account, or something like that, any of those things, it's really going to provide something for you.
I am so happy that you said it in the way you did of reframing, because I think a
Mm,
lot of people get so. For example, I had a friend that reached out to me today and was like, I'm having a bit of a panic mode because all the people that are around my age are doing so good for themselves. They're in this field, or they have this style home, or they're in this style relationship, and I just feel like I don't know what I should do. I don't know where I should be, and I'm panicking. And my
mm,
response to them was, I think you're focusing so hard on all of those things that you need something drastic to shift your brain into another point of view. I said, you've got your mental cache is full. You need to reset that cache. You've got too much that you're worried about. Take yourself out of that. I said, for example, the other day I went out on a hike just because I could. I needed to get away from my daily life. I needed to get away from all the stuff that's stressing me. And I just went outside
right,
and enjoyed the air, enjoyed what I was looking at. And it's such a different thing from what I was in the moment, that small act that put me in a different perspective. I was like, you need to get out of your house, you need to get out of your head and go do something that is different, a drastic shift, even if it's just for a moment. And she's like, well, I'm planning a trip to go do this and this. I said, no, the key word is you're planning a trip. That is adding more stress. Don't
right,
do drastic. Just get out of the house and go somewhere. Something
right,
different, something that you're not even expecting to do today, so that you don't think about that anymore. Reframe your perspective today.
right.
So I love that you use that word.
Yeah, it's you gave him some great advice. The first thing that will make somebody miserable is comparing yourself to other people,
Yes.
because no matter what, you're still seeing the highlight reel. Whether, and I'm not even talking about social media, that's a whole other animal, but like,
God, yeah.
you don't see the struggles that they've had to get there, or the costs that they've had to do to get there, whether it's been relationships or health or whatever it happens to be, or learning, or there is no straight line.
Yes.
right? And that doesn't make it bad because it's a jiggly line. Even Steve Jobs, who founded Apple and created this enormous company and hired a CEO from Pepsi, brought him in, and the guy fired him, right? And so this was his company, and he was publicly fired, and then he went off and he started another company, and he was brought back, and he did everything for Apple, and he was an enormous businessman, and was in both iterations, but
Yeah.
that wasn't a straight line,
No, it
right?
never
Fired
is.
from the company you started by the guy that you brought in to run the company for you.
Yeah. Like
So
how twisted is that?
right,
But it's
right.
life,
So,
isn't it?
it's just part of the ride. Like, you learn things, and what makes it easier and also more impactful and useful in your life is when you approach life from a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And when
Yes.
you have a growth mindset, everything is contributory in your experience.
I completely agree. I seen a quote today that I really enjoyed, and it said, "Don't be afraid to start over, because this time you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience."
Right, right, yeah.
I love that. So, Landon, if you could come on back in, are you ready to drop the bomb, buddy?
I'm always ready.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeffrey, this is a question we ask at the end of every episode.
All right.
Um, it can be a bit tricky, and it's gotten me. They've turned it around and used it on me 3 times
Yeah.
already. Um, and of course, I know the question, and I was never prepared. So, the atom bomb question is: what is one question that you wish we would have asked you, and how would you have answered that question?
Hmm. I don't. That's interesting. I didn't walk in here hoping you would answer any questions because, I mean, it's silly. I was just being present with what
Yeah.
was going on,
Correct.
I love it.
right? So I didn't have any expectation other than just having fun and talking to you guys and being present with it. I mean, I think we covered a lot. It, uh, one there's not a question. So first, I don't have a question for you to ask. I do, and I could contribute something that I think people struggle with, which is how do you reconcile your relationship with your parents?
Okay.
Ooh.
Wow. That's a very good question.
Yeah. So I did that, and I could tell you that it was transformative on both parts. And what I did was I used compassion and curiosity, and I came from a place of completely not knowing anything. So we have this picture of who they are based on growing up with them and their reactions. And here's an example. So my mother one time said, Jeffrey, you were there. I don't understand why you were asking. I said, we had completely different experiences. You grew up in a different time than I did. You were a woman. I was a child. You were female. I was, a little boy. You grew up in a completely different town than I did. I grew up in this place, and you knew different people. Like, there's nothing about our experience that was the same, other than the fact that we were in the same place,
Correct.
Right.
right?
Right.
Right. So first, the experiences that you just assume you both had, you didn't really have. You had different
No.
experiences of those moments.
Yes.
First. Second is, have you ever approached your parents as if you're trying to get to know them and who they are and what their life
Mhm.
was like you were just meeting somebody for the very first time?
Wow.
Yeah, I definitely ask my dad stuff like that all the time. Just to
Yeah.
strike a conversation and find out what he was like when he was younger, and all about his military background and stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
It makes a big difference, doesn't it?
it does. He's got some very funny stories.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really fascinating. It just changes everything.
Huh.
So, Landon,
Well,
how
what
do you feel about that as a response to your infamous question?
I mean, honestly, like if anybody could, wrap around it. It's one of those things, man. You just answer in your own way, and I really think that you took it to a whole nother level, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I like what you do. I like what you're about. Living in the present is something that's a struggle for everybody on the daily, But just like you said, though, living in the present is empowering. It's a fulfilling experience. You do observe things way more being present than if you are focused on the past or if you're focused into the future, because you're not looking at what's happening right now. So,
Absolutely, dude.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Davis, do you have any closing words for us today?
Yeah. Be kind, be curious, and be present, and have some fun.
And have some fun. That is the best closing line I think anyone's ever given us. And just have some fun.
Yeah.
People forget that, man. Like
Yeah.
we live in such a tight knit, uptight society. Like, I don't care what age you are. Sometimes you just need to go out and have some fun.
Right? If it's not fun, what are you doing?
That's poetic, man. Put it on a shirt. If it's not fun, what are you doing? I need that. Love it. Well, Mr. Davis, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your curiosity. And overall, what you've brought to the table tonight put a smile on my face. I've seen it on Landon's face, and I know the people out in our audience tonight were enjoying it. They already said that they were like, I agree with this man. So I enjoyed having you on the show tonight, brother. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Everyone in reality, we love you guys. Everybody out there on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, our whole Tavern family. As always, we love you guys from the bottom of our hearts. #Tavern Family. And as always, thanks for stopping by the Tavern.